I found this motel by accident when I took a wrong turn. A small, forgotten place with only 5 rooms, the front desk was dusty as if there hadn't been guests here for years. But the strangest thing was that my name was in the registration book. The rain was pounding against my windshield as I drove through the Colorado mountains. 3 straight days on assignment for the Tribune had left me with nothing but a half-finished article, a splitting headache, and eyes that burned from too much coffee and too little sleep. Denver was still 2 hours away according to my GPS, but the storm was intensifying, transforming the highway into a treacherous mirror of black ice and blinding headlights. I'm Jack Harmon, investigative journalist. Not exactly front-page material in today's digital landscape, but I've built a solid reputation for unraveling stories others can't crack. This latest assignment, investigating a series of unsolved disappearances along Interstate 70, was looking like it might be my first real failure. When the "reduced speed ahead" sign emerged from the darkness, I eased off the accelerator. The exit ramp appeared without warning, my headlights catching the faded green sign, Old Bridge Motel, next exit. I hadn't planned on stopping, but my eyelids were growing heavier with each passing mile. A voice of reason in my head whispered that driving in this condition was just asking for trouble. I signaled, though there wasn't another car in sight, and took the exit. The narrow access road wound through dense pine forest, the pavement cracked and reclaimed by stubborn weeds. Just as I was beginning to think I'd made a wrong turn, the trees cleared, revealing a small clearing dominated by a 2-story building with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign. Old Bridge Motel buzzed in faint blue light, the letter G intermittently going dark. The parking lot was empty except for a dusty pickup truck parked near what I assumed was the manager's office. I pulled in beside it, killed the engine, and sat listening to the rain hammer against the roof. Something felt off about this place, but I dismissed the feeling as simple fatigue. 3 sleepless nights would make anyone paranoid. I grabbed my overnight bag and made a dash for the entrance, still getting soaked in the few seconds it took to reach the door. A bell jangled overhead as I stepped inside, shaking water from my jacket. The lobby was small and dated, wood-paneled walls yellowed with age, a threadbare carpet in an indeterminate shade of brown, and the distinct smell of mothballs and furniture polish. The wall behind the front desk displayed 5 keys hanging from brass hooks, numbered 1 through 5. A desk lamp cast the only light in the room, illuminating a worn registration journal that lay open on the counter. No one came to greet me. I cleared my throat and called out, "Hello." My voice sounded muffled, as if the room itself were absorbing the sound. When no one appeared, I approached the desk and glanced down at the registration book out of professional habit. What I saw made my skin prickle. There, in neat handwriting on the last occupied line, Jack Harmon, Room 3, check-in, today's date. I blinked hard, certain I was hallucinating from exhaustion. But the name remained, written in blue ink that seemed fresher than the other entries. My name. My full name, not just J. Harmon or John H. as I sometimes used when traveling. I hadn't booked this room. I couldn't have. I hadn't even known this place existed until 10 minutes ago. A quiet voice came from behind me. "Have you stayed here before, Mr. Harmon?" I spun around, heart racing. A thin man in a wrinkled white shirt stood where I was certain no one had been moments before. His face was gaunt, almost cadaverous, with deep-set eyes that seemed to reflect no light. He wore a name tag that read simply "Manager." "No," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Never. There must be some mistake with that registration." The man tilted his head slightly, studying me with an unsettling intensity. "Strange," he replied, his voice like dry leaves rustling. "You have a reservation for room 3. Prepaid, even." He reached behind him without looking and retrieved the key marked with a brass 3. I wanted to argue, to demand an explanation, but exhaustion clouded my judgment. Maybe I had booked it and forgotten. Or perhaps my editor had made arrangements without telling me. Neither explanation felt right, but I was too tired to solve the mystery now. "How much for the night?" I asked, reaching for my wallet. "As I said, it's been taken care of." He slid the key across the counter. "Room 3, top of the stairs, end of the hall." I hesitated, then took the key. Its weight felt oddly significant in my palm, the metal cold against my skin. "Is there a restaurant nearby? I haven't eaten since this morning." "Nothing open at this hour," he replied. "There's a vending machine upstairs. And a complimentary coffee maker in your room." He smiled thinly, revealing teeth that seemed too uniform, too perfect for his otherwise weathered appearance. I nodded my thanks and headed for the staircase, feeling his eyes on my back with each step. The stairs creaked under my weight, the sound echoing in the silent building. The second-floor hallway stretched before me, longer than the building's exterior had suggested. 5 doors, widely spaced, lined the corridor. The wallpaper was a faded floral pattern, and overhead lights buzzed and flickered, casting moving shadows that danced along the walls. Room 3 was at the far end. I inserted the key, turned it, and pushed the door open. The room was entirely ordinary, which somehow made everything else feel even more unsettling. A queen-sized bed with a faded blue comforter dominated the space. A small desk sat beneath the window, which looked out onto the empty parking lot and the rain-soaked forest beyond. A dated television was mounted on the wall opposite the bed, and a door to my right presumably led to the bathroom. I dropped my bag on the floor and did what came naturally to me as an investigative reporter. I began to inspect the room carefully. The drawers in the nightstand contained the typical Gideon Bible and a local phone directory dated 3 years ago. The desk held a pad of paper with the motel's letterhead and a pen that had run dry. Nothing unusual. Yet something continued to nag at me. A sense of familiarity, as if I'd been in this exact room before. I chalked it up to the generic nature of roadside motels. They all blended together after a while. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I remembered seeing a vending machine in an alcove near the stairwell and decided to check it out before settling in for the night. I patted my pockets for loose change, then froze. My jacket, it felt different. Heavier, somehow. I reached into the right pocket and pulled out my pocketknife, a small silver multi-tool my father had given me years ago. But as I examined it, I noticed a small scratch on the handle that hadn't been there before, a distinct X mark that I had no memory of making. Puzzled, I reached into the left pocket and found my silver Zippo lighter. I flipped it open, struck the wheel, and watched the flame dance. The lighter was nearly empty, though I'd just refilled it yesterday. I dug deeper and pulled out a crumpled receipt. It was from Roadside Diner, a place I'd stopped at earlier that day for coffee. The timestamp read 8:17 p.m., exactly 1 hour ago. But there was something off about it. The coffee I'd ordered was listed as black, no sugar, yet I distinctly remembered ordering it with cream and 2 sugars. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog of fatigue. I was overthinking things, letting the strangeness of finding my name in the register color everything else. I needed food and rest. I tucked everything back into my pockets and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, I noticed the closet to my left, its sliding door partially open. Curious, I pulled it fully open. Inside hung a jacket. My jacket. Identical to the one I was wearing, down to the frayed cuff on the right sleeve and the Tribune press pass clipped to the breast pocket. I stood there, frozen, staring at what could only be described as my own clothing hanging neatly on a wire hanger. "This is impossible," I whispered, reaching out to touch the fabric. It was real, the same worn leather of my jacket, the same small tear near the collar that I'd been meaning to repair. I checked the size on the tag, my size. I checked the pockets, empty. My mind raced through possible explanations. Perhaps I'd left a jacket here on a previous trip. No, I'd never been to this motel before. Could someone have planted it? But why, And how would they have duplicated my jacket so perfectly? I backed away from the closet, bumping against the desk chair. The logical part of my brain, the part that had served me well as an investigative journalist, kicked in. There had to be a rational explanation. I decided to confront the manager. This had gone beyond coincidence or fatigue-induced paranoia. I stepped into the hallway, pulling the door closed behind me, and stared in confusion. The corridor seemed different. Longer than before, with the exit sign at the far end appearing much further away than it had moments ago. The light fixtures buzzed more intensely, and the air felt thick, almost resistant, as if I were trying to move through invisible molasses. I shook my head again, harder this time, trying to clear whatever mental fog was settling over me. The hallway shifted subtly, returning to its normal appearance. Just my imagination, I told myself, though without much conviction. I made my way downstairs, each step on the creaking staircase echoing loudly in the silent building. The lobby was empty, the front desk unattended. The registration book still lay open, but when I glanced at it, I noticed something strange. There were no other entries on the page besides my name. The previous entries I'd seen earlier had vanished. "Hello," I called out. My voice seemed to fall flat, as if the air itself were absorbing the sound. "Manager?" I hit the bell on the counter, its sharp ring cutting through the silence. No response. I hit it again, more insistently. The pickup truck I'd parked next to was still visible through the front window. Surely the manager hadn't left. I reached across the counter and lifted the registration book, flipping back through its pages. Empty. All of them. Just blank lines, except for the single entry with my name. A soft thud from behind made me turn. A door labeled "Manager's Office" was now slightly ajar, though I could have sworn it had been closed moments ago. "Hello? Anyone there?" I called, moving toward the door. No answer. I should have been more cautious, should have recognized the warning signs that something was deeply wrong. But journalistic curiosity has always been both my greatest asset and my most dangerous flaw. I pushed the door open. The office was small and cluttered with filing cabinets and cardboard boxes. A desk lamp cast a pool of yellow light over an ancient desktop computer. Photographs lined the walls, black and white images of the motel from different eras. In each one, the building looked exactly the same: 5 windows along the top floor, faded sign, empty parking lot. What caught my attention, however, was a bulletin board hanging on the far wall. It was covered with newspaper clippings and what appeared to be missing persons reports. I moved closer, squinting in the dim light to read the headlines. "Local man still missing after 3 weeks, search called off for missing Tribune reporter, disappearances along I-70 continue to baffle authorities." My blood ran cold when I saw my own face staring back at me from one of the clippings. It was a staff photo from the Tribune, one taken years ago when I'd first joined the paper. The headline above it read, "Award-winning journalist vanishes while investigating highway disappearances." The date on the clipping was tomorrow. What the hell is this? I muttered, reaching out to touch the paper, half expecting it to dissolve under my fingers. But it was solid, real. "You weren't supposed to come in here," came a voice from behind me. I whirled around. The manager stood in the doorway, his thin frame silhouetted against the light from the lobby. His expression remained unchanged, that same emotionless mask. "What is all this?" I demanded, gesturing at the bulletin board. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" "No joke, Mr. Harmon," he replied calmly. "Just inevitability. Look, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm leaving." I moved toward the door, but the manager didn't step aside. "That would be unwise," he said. "The storm has worsened. The roads are impassable now." As if on cue, a flash of lightning illuminated the lobby behind him, followed by a deafening crack of thunder that seemed to shake the building's foundations. I glanced toward the front windows and saw sheets of rain pounding against the glass with unnatural force. "I'll take my chances," I said, pushing past him. He made no move to stop me, which somehow made me even more uneasy. I crossed the lobby in quick strides and reached for the front door handle. It wouldn't budge. Locked. "The doors lock automatically after midnight," the manager explained from behind me. "Safety precaution." I checked my watch, 10:47 p.m. "It's not midnight," I said. He glanced at his own watch, a vintage timepiece that looked out of place on his bony wrist. "My apologies. My watch must be fast." He reached into his pocket and produced a ring of keys. "If you insist on leaving, I won't stop you." He approached slowly and inserted a key into the door. It turned with a heavy click, and he pushed the door open. A wall of rain greeted me, along with a howling wind that tore through the lobby, scattering papers and rustling the pages of the registration book. "Be careful on the mountain roads," he said. "They can be disorienting after dark." I hesitated, staring out into the tempest. My car sat where I'd left it, but something about it seemed off. It took me a moment to realize what it was. The parking lot lights reflected off its surface as if it were bone dry, despite the torrential downpour. "What's happening here?" I asked, turning back to the manager. For the first time, his expression changed, the slightest hint of a smile. "You're asking the wrong question, Mr. Harmon. It's not what is happening, but when." Another crash of thunder, and the lights flickered, plunging the lobby into momentary darkness. When they came back on, the manager was gone. I stood in the doorway, rain soaking my clothes, unable to step forward or back. Part of me was screaming to get in my car and drive as far away from this place as possible. But another part, the investigative journalist who could never leave a story half-finished, knew I needed answers. I closed the door and locked it myself, pocketing the key before the manager could reclaim it. Then I headed back upstairs, determined to gather my things and figure out what was happening. As I climbed the stairs, a strange thought occurred to me: what if the disappearances I'd been investigating were somehow connected to this place? What if I'd inadvertently stumbled into the very heart of the mystery I'd been trying to solve? When I reached room 3, the door was standing open. I was certain I'd closed it behind me. "Hello?" I called, cautiously stepping inside. The room was exactly as I'd left it, with one exception. A notepad on the desk now had writing on it, hasty scrawl in what appeared to be my own handwriting. "It always ends the same. You check in. You find the jacket. You discover the clippings. You try to leave. You can't. When you wake up, you're back on the road, heading toward this place again. I've been through this loop 7 times now. Maybe this time you'll remember." The words sent a chill down my spine. I didn't write this. I couldn't have. Yet it was undeniably my handwriting, the distinctive way I crossed my T's and the slight leftward slant. I snatched up the notepad and flipped through the pages. More notes, all in my handwriting, each dated with previous days, weeks, months. "Look in the Bible in the drawer. Page 117. The truck in the parking lot has been there for years. Check the license plate. Don't trust what you see in the mirror. The manager isn't what he seems." The last page contained just 3 words: "Wake up, Jack." I dropped the notepad as if it had burned me. This had to be an elaborate hoax. Someone was messing with me, maybe a rival reporter who didn't want me breaking the highway disappearance story, or someone involved in the disappearances themselves. Yet deep down, I knew that explanation didn't hold water. No one could have known I'd stop at this particular motel on this particular night. I hadn't even known myself until I saw the exit sign. A movement in my peripheral vision caught my attention. I turned toward the bathroom door, which was now slightly ajar. Had it been open before? I couldn't remember. "Is someone there?" I called, moving cautiously toward the door. I pushed it open slowly. The bathroom was small and dated, with cracked tiles and a rust-stained sink. The shower curtain was drawn across the tub. As I watched, it moved slightly, as if disturbed by a draft. Heart pounding, I reached for the curtain and yanked it back. The tub was empty. I exhaled slowly, resting my hands on the edge of the sink as I tried to gather my thoughts. When I looked up at the mirror, I nearly fell backward in shock. The face staring back at me wasn't mine, or rather, it was mine, but changed. Haggard, with several days' growth of beard, dark circles under the eyes, and a nasty cut across the forehead that I definitely didn't have. The reflection raised a hand to the cut, but I remained frozen, my own hands gripping the sink. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. The reflection's lips didn't move with mine. Instead, it smiled, a tired, knowing smile. Then it raised a finger to its lips in a shushing gesture and pointed behind me. I spun around. No one was there. When I turned back to the mirror, my normal reflection stared back at me, mimicking my movements as it should. I backed out of the bathroom, grabbing my bag from the floor. Whatever was happening here, I needed to leave. Now. I'd take my chances with the storm. As I moved toward the door, the television suddenly flickered to life. Static at first, then a grainy image appeared, aerial footage of a mountain road, emergency vehicles with flashing lights, a car crumpled against a guardrail. A news reporter stood in the foreground, rain pelting her as she spoke into a microphone. I couldn't hear her words, but the ticker at the bottom of the screen read, "Journalist found dead in car wreck on I-70." The camera zoomed in on the wrecked vehicle. It was my car. The screen went black. In the sudden silence, I heard footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate steps approaching my room. I moved to the window, looking for another way out. My car sat in the parking lot below, still inexplicably dry despite the pounding rain. I tried to open the window, but it wouldn't budge, as if it had been painted shut. The footsteps stopped outside my door. "Who's there?" I called, trying to keep my voice steady. "You've been here before," came a voice, my voice. The door swung open slowly. A man stood in the doorway. He wore my clothes, had my face, but his eyes were different. Hollow. Empty. As if something vital had been scraped out from behind them. "What the hell?" I managed, backing away until I hit the wall. He stared at me without blinking. "You shouldn't have come back." I felt cold run down my spine. My mind raced, trying to process what I was seeing. My doppelganger took a step into the room, and I noticed something odd about his movements. They were slightly out of sync, like watching a film where the audio doesn't quite match the video. I've never been here before," I stammered. "You say that every time," he replied, his voice eerily flat. I glanced frantically around the room, looking for a weapon, an escape route, anything. My gaze fell on the notepad again. The same notepad I'd found filled with my own handwriting, warnings from myself. "What is this place?" I asked. "What's happening to me?" My double tilted his head slightly. "This is where it happens. Where time folds back on itself. You investigate disappearances, only to become one of them. Over and over and over. I don't understand." "You will. You always do, right before you forget again." He gestured toward the window. "Out there, you crashed your car. Or you will crash it. Time doesn't work right here." A sudden realization hit me. The old bridge, it's not just the name of the motel, is it? He smiled, a hollow expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Now you're beginning to remember. The bridge collapsed 30 years ago. 5 people died. Their cars went into the ravine. But they never left. And neither did I whispered. "Neither will you," he corrected. I lunged for the door, determined to get past him, to escape this nightmare. But as I moved, the room seemed to stretch and distort around me. The walls elongated, the ceiling rose, and suddenly I was running down an endless corridor that hadn't been there before. "You can't outrun yourself, Jack," my voice called from everywhere and nowhere. I kept running until my lungs burned, until the hallway finally ended at a door marked with a brass number 3. I yanked it open, desperate for escape. I found myself back in room 3, staring at my own reflection in the mirror. But I wasn't in front of any mirror. I turned off the light. From the darkness, I heard my own voice whisper, "Time to go back." I blinked, and suddenly I was behind the wheel of my car. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour. My coffee sat in a cup holder, still warm. The radio played softly, a weather alert warning of dangerous conditions on mountain roads. I checked the time, 9:47 p.m. According to my GPS, Denver was still 2 hours away. A green highway sign emerged from the darkness ahead, Old Bridge Motel, 3 miles. I didn't remember how I got here. The last thing I recalled was, what? Interviewing someone about the highway disappearances. Leaving the office this morning. The memories felt slippery, insubstantial. Something told me I should drive past, ignore the sign, keep going despite my exhaustion. But another part of me, the investigative journalist who could never resist a mystery, felt strangely drawn to the exit. As I signaled and began to slow, I caught a glimpse of something in my rearview mirror, a light burning in an upstairs window, as if someone were waiting for me. But there was nothing behind me on the road but darkness and rain. Who am I, really? And have I been here once before, or am I always here, trapped in an endless loop of arrival and departure, never quite escaping, never quite remembering? I took the exit. Some stories, it seems, I'm destined to keep chasing forever.